Hello, dear listener. You're listening to the Mantic Universe podcast. I'm Chris, and as ever, I'm joined by my good friend Mark.
Hey, everyone.
Mark is currently having a storm, or there is a storm where Mark is. That is probably a better way to describe it. So we're not sure how much power he has. So there's probably going to be some strange things going on there, dear listener, for which we apologise in advance. No Clem for this episode because either he's visiting friends, visiting family, or family are visiting him. I forget which. But sadly, he's not available tonight. But Mark and I are privileged and very, very lucky to be joined for this episode by Alessio Cavatore from Riverhorse and Mantic Games. Alessio, the word legend gets bandied around a lot these days, and I make you slightly uncomfortable when I call you that.
Yes.
But I very much think you are a legend of the games industry. And a quick little anecdote, dear listener, is Mark and I were lucky enough to go to Clash of Kings for Kings of War last year in Nottingham. And Mark very, very kindly organised a visit to Alessio, and I sort of tagged along. And it was quite possibly the highlight of my weekend. It was so wonderful. We went along to the office and had a lovely time. And Alessio, you were just so incredibly generous with your time. You gave me a Terminator model just to be nice, some guy turning up to your office. And it was genuinely fascinating talking to you and hearing about your process and the journey you've been on in the games industry. So that really was an absolute privilege. And I thank both of you so much for that. That really was, something very, very special, which I treasure to this day. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So we're going to do a quick little, this is a Mup Shorts episode. We're just going to do a quick little interview, and we're very, very lucky to have you on. So should we maybe just do a very quick, because you've been on many other podcasts and other things talking about your career, and although it's fascinating, your time is very precious. So maybe you can just give us a potted history of your time at GW, how you became a game designer, your time at GW, Riverhorse and the adventure you went on with Riverhorse, and of course working with Mantic.
Sure. Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Yes, we don't want to be here forever. Yes, so basically started in 96, playing a Warhammer tournament in Italy, got a job at Games Workshop, first as a translator, then a year later as a game designer, worked at Games Workshop for 15 years, where I've written kind of army books and codexes and the rule books of all three systems, which was very cool. So I did, Lord of the Rings, Warhammer, and 40k, and a few other games. But it was super cool. 15 years, learned a lot, and then founded Riverhorse in 2010. Left Games Workshop, started Riverhorse, my own company, where we were trying to design games for ourselves and publish them. And ended up doing a bit of that, as in our own games, but also a lot of the design for hire for other companies, such as Mantic. You're familiar. I've done both action for Warlord, but also Kings of War for Mantic. Those were the two games that I did at the very start of that services, if you want. And through the years, I've done a lot of other services. I designed a lot of other games for other companies. In fact, I'm gonna start a kind of a work-related Facebook page, because my private Facebook page is now chock full, and I would like to use that for personal use. So I'll start a public one, not a public one, but a work one. I will try to put there all the stuff that I worked on. So that's the summary of the career, I'll say.
That, to be fair, that was a very quick summary. And that was something I wanted to ask you, Alessio, was that you just mentioned it perfectly with how your Facebook profile just becomes entirely work related. As someone that works in an industry, I find this fascinating. You work in the games industry because you love the games industry, right? It was something you were incredibly passionate about, and your hobby sort of becomes how you pay the bills every month, right?
Yep.
Does it, in your experience, does it have a negative experience to your, are you just as keen now to do hobby stuff as you were to play games, etc., or do you find other ways to unwind?
You are correct. If your hobby becomes, a lot of people say, "Oh, you're so lucky. Your hobby has become your work." And you go, "Yes, it's cool. The my hobby has become my work, but also the trouble is that my hobby has become my work. So there's good and bad. Yes, it's a nice environment, but also, yeah, you're right. A lot of whenever I play games these days of the kind that I work on, like war games and board games, it's difficult to not think of them as product as opposed to just enjoying the game. And so sometimes you become a little bit too critical, too analytical, perhaps. It's like, oh, this component must cost a lot of money. I wonder why they put this component instead of another component. So it's difficult to not think with work brain on. So in terms of relaxing, I often play computer games. I think computer games is something that I find more relaxing because I don't work on computer games, right? So I can be more like just a user. I still play war games and board games fairly regularly, but often it's play testing because you have just so much time, so you tend to.
I think of that as work, and funnily enough, because playtesting, you're not playing for fun, are you? You're looking for problems. Funnily enough, a good friend of mine is a computer game designer here in Frankfurt, and he has exactly the same issue, that it was his hobby and it was the thing he was passionate about, but of course the relationship is going to change when this is what you do 9 to 5. If you're lucky. Well, let's be honest, I don't think you work 9 to 5. I think you work a lot longer than that. But anyway, that's how you pay your bills. I'm sure it's going to change your relationship. I think that's really, really interesting. And while you mentioned computer games or video games, can you recommend a good video game or something you've played recently that you've enjoyed?
Well, I think the one I played the most recently seems very obvious answer, but it's Baldur's Gate 3. It's been quite an experience. It's great because I played it, single player, did all the campaign, but also I played it regularly. I play now every week with my friends. The old group I played role-play games with when I was in Italy, and I was a lad in Italy, we're now connecting from all over the world because obviously our lives taken us all over, but we connect roughly once a week and we play that. You can play with up to 4 characters, and so there's 4 of us, and it's good fun. It's really good fun to be together, chatting like this while playing, and I love that. Yeah, so that's the one I played the most recently.
It's an amazing excuse for you 4 to get together.
Yep.
It's just an excuse for you, because I'm sure at least 50% of it will be you just chatting away and occasionally doing stuff in the game. But it's a brilliant excuse to get you all together. That's amazing.
There's definitely a lot of chatting before the session. When the session starts, no, we're in there. You're the characters and you're in. But yes, before the session starts, yes, there's a lot of catching up. Yes. Fantastic.
And Alessio, if I'm remembering this right, so River Horse, I think was for many reasons, it was a super interesting experience for you. But as I remember it, I think you were initially, and please jump in and correct me, when you set the company up, your intention was to design games for River Horse under that, as sort of Ronnie did with Mantic, right? Yep. But over time, you did do that, but you also made games for other people, and I think you also offered a lot of consulting services at the same time, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. River. Yes, absolutely.
And how did you find that blend of the different aspects to the company?
Well, it's normally a good thing because when you design for yourself and publish the games for yourself, obviously there's a degree of entrepreneurship and risk. And obviously you invest, and sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. So it's a very ups and downs, financially, emotionally, all of that. While as a service, when you provide services to the company, it is more like normally, you sacrifice your time, but you are paid for it. So you kind of have 2 different streams of income, 2 different streams of business, which means that it gives you flexibility. If you're strapped for cash, you do more services. If you feel like, now I have some cash, let's invest it and make a game. So it gives you flexibility. And eventually, we did publish quite a few games. Yes, with River Horse, we did licensing. It's similar model to what Mantic does, but maybe a bit less on the crowdfunding side. So we did publish a few games through the years, quite a few. Check my Facebook page when I publish it. Ultimately, just in April, basically a few months ago, I then concluded that experience by effectively selling River Horse to Ronnie, to Mantic, which was basically the conclusion of the River Horse adventure.
So will you be offering consultancy under the name of River Horse, or is River Horse, as it was, completely no more?
Right. So the Mantic has done what you call a assets buy. So basically, Mantic bought everything that was inside the box of River Horse, the company. So there's a company called River Horse Europe Ltd, which is a limited company registered in Britain, which is me and another couple of shareholders. And Mantic bought everything that was that company. So it bought all the licenses, all the stock, all the brand itself. So the actual logo and the brand River Horse is now Mantic can use it to make games, while the legal entity is still mine and of the shareholders, but effectively is now an empty box, which is just for me I just use it to sell services. Basically, it's just me hiring myself out to offer services to people. So
it's your consulting services.
It's my consulting services, yes. And obviously, if I was to make another game if I wanted to make another game with River Horse, I would have to make up a different logo, a different brand, etc. So frankly, I don't see that happening. I'm very happy with the consultancy side of things. On the other end, I am now, my role with Mantic as a consultancy again is I do two things for Mantic, really. Two main things. One thing is I run River Horse for Mantic. So the brand, the games, the licenses the River Horse has, and some of them, like Labyrinth, we just did a Kickstarter, a crowdfund for it, game fund, and so those projects, I would be everything that Mantic has bought that was River Horse. Basically, Ronnie wants me to keep running with that, and be kind of the lead developer, if you want, on all of those. Project manager as well in many cases, but basically
product owner. I'm thinking product owner. Yeah. Kind of.
I mean, it's basically the Mantic can continue exploiting those licenses, like Ghost in the Shell. Now where I have to run Ghost in the Shell for Ronnie. I'm developing it. I'm thinking about the products, and obviously this time with Mantic, with Ronnie, with all the other guys, we make it. It's a Mantic product, but
I've got to say, sorry, Alessio, that was one of my questions. I thought we might have to cut out. Was I remember you talking about Ghost in the Shell last year, and I was so excited about that. So you saying it's still going ahead makes me very happy. By the way, I will be backing that or buying that or however else I'm getting my hands on that. That's very exciting.
Yes, so basically the products that were the licenses that were River Horse, I still run within Mantic for Mantic. The other thing I do for Mantic, which I guess the listeners will be more interested in, I work on Mantic products. Obviously, the one that has public knowledge now is, of course, Epic Warpath, which I worked on with Matt for the last few months. I recently about to start another project, which I cannot talk about. It's too soon. But, basically, I do some design services for Mantic as well as running River Horse. So it's almost like two different jobs. One job is continuing bringing forward the River Horse side of Mantic, if you want, the River Horse division of Mantic, call it that. And the other job is actually just a designer hired for game design for Mantic, which is great. I mean, for me, is concentrating on stuff I enjoy doing, designing games. It was the whole reason to sell River Horse, is that I can concentrate more on making games, designing games, and less on running a business, less on...
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because, of course, running a business in itself is a huge part. So I was going to ask you, actually, what the trade-off is between how much of your time you actually get to spend designing games and doing the bit you love when you work for yourself or you run your own company, right? It's so interesting.
When you have even a company as small as River Horse was, when we had a few staff members, but yeah, a lot of it was running the business side of things. Doing the production, the licensing, sourcing China, export, import, sales. So I had various people helping me as agents, as employees, as different levels, but basically you're running a business, and that doesn't leave a lot of time for designing games. I did manage to remain involved with some of the games. Picking and choosing. As you're the boss, you can probably choose the ones you prefer. But I think the situation I'm in now is I find it more relaxing, less stressful, because I don't have to worry about stuff. I don't have to worry about product palettes around the world, so I can just focus more on the products.
You don't have to worry about the Suez Canal and how that's looking, and
exactly.
all these incredible situations. Absolutely, indeed. I think it's very good for your blood pressure. And sorry, I just want to. Yes. I know the conversation sort of moved on, but I just wanted to sort of shoehorn this in. Is for Riverhorse and such a small company, the licenses you got were just incredible. I mean, we're talking The Terminator, we're talking My Little Pony, we're talking Pacific Rim. I mean, these are huge global...
Hunger Games. Hunger Games.
Oh, I wasn't even aware of the Hunger Games. There you go.
Yes, we did a Hunger Games game, yeah.
How do you make those contacts? And just very briefly, but how do you make those contacts? That's just incredible.
Well, you... start with one. The most difficult one is the first, because all the licensors want to know first is what have you done before. So if you getting the first one is difficult. I was very lucky because I had worked when I was working against Workshop. I worked on the Lord of the Rings product from the licensing point of view as well. I was involved with that to a degree, and so I've learned a lot, and I could use that experience later to approach people and say, no, I did work. I know I designed this Lord of the Rings product on a license, and so I was aware of the ins and outs and the do's and don'ts in the process. And I could show that I had designed a game under license before, so that helped getting the first license. After you get the first, then you make a product, and they can see that you're for real. You make things happen. You end up with product. They start to listen to you more, and getting the next one is easier, and so on and so forth.
Incredible. And you brought it around beautifully, Alessio, and then I interrupted. So obviously working for Mantic, so you're running the Riverhorse products. You're also doing sort of the thing you love the most, which is designing games. I mean, already previously, even before this acquisition, you've already had a hand in some of the most important Mantic games. I mean, obviously you wrote the original rules to Kings of War. I think, am I right in thinking you actually wrote the original Warpath, which was the 28mm game?
Yes, the very, very
if you
original.
Can remember that far back.
Yeah, the brief was effectively to do a Kings of War in space, which obviously in the end it didn't quite work out that way. The brief changed, as the plans often change when they meet contact with the enemy. But yes, it's funny because being back at Mantic a bit more often. I mean, through the years we always work with Mantic. We did several projects together. In a way, that's how the merger happened, because we were still thinking about doing projects together, Ronnie and I, and because we were thinking all this complicated joint venture contracting and agreements.
It was literally the simplest way of moving forward was to do this, right?
Laughingly, I told Ronnie, instead of us worrying about all these complicated joint ventures, why don't you just buy Riverhorse, as a joke? And he was like, keep talking. All right, okay, let's take this seriously.
Why don't you buy my incredibly successful company?
Yeah, it was funny. It was a meeting of minds, and yes, it was indeed. In hindsight, you could say it was the obvious thing to do. Certainly, I mean, selling a company is not a simple thing. It took about almost a year of haggling and deciding how it was going to happen. Again, I've learned a lot about acquisitions are not a simple process because there's so many stakeholders and shareholders and interests and complications, like with licensing. The licensing side was definitely possibly the most complicated part, because you have to go to the licensor and say, this is happening. Can we transfer the license to this other company? And they don't. There's no reason for them. It's not automatic that they say yes. So it's a complicated process. Yeah.
And I guess you've got to check the existing contract to see what that says, right? So absolutely. Let's say, for example, My Little Pony. Oh, what did we have something in that contract that says if we're bought out, can they continue? Is there a break or whatever?
Yeah. There's a lot of, and all contract is different. Every contract is different. Licensor is different. The relationship you have is different, and so some are easier, some are more difficult. But yeah, it's not a simple process. It's certainly not a simple process. I've learned a lot again because obviously it was my first acquisition where I was part of it. So interesting,
amazing. And just one last question before we really move on to the Mantic stuff is. Were you a little bit sad to sell, or were you just happy it was going forward?
That's a very good question. I was very happy of giving up the stress of running the business, and that's why I did it. Basically, I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm tired. This ups and downs of running businesses, I find it very stressful. Maybe I'm not cut for being an entrepreneur. It took me 12 years, 14 years to find, because 2010 Riverhorse was founded, 2014 Riverhorse was sold. So 14 years, which is a good, decent go for a company.
It's a lot more than most companies manage.
Yeah. No, you provide quite a long time, yes. And so there was a degree of, yes, I think giving up the stress is the right thing to do, but obviously on the other end, it's difficult to let go. It's difficult to relinquish control. When you're used to be the boss, it's obviously difficult to go, I'm not going to be the boss anymore. I'm going to take orders and be a consultant and be which frankly, again, because I was already doing that, that's not a problem. So I was like, no. But you're right that after it happened, because I keep rationally saying it's scary, it's a big change, but I think it's the right thing to do. So eventually I did, and I'm glad I did. I am happy with the outcome. Ron is happy with the outcome. We were talking about it the other day. I'm keen for him to be happy with the outcome. I don't want him to feel disappointed. So, I'm trying my best to make sure that he's happy, and he's happy. We had the frank conversation. But yeah, so the interesting thing that I felt after selling, don't know if you've seen Conan the Barbarian, the original Conan the Barbarian. There's a final scene when he's about to kill Tulsa Doom. The guy that kind of destroyed his life, ruled his life, and he was the enemy. He was leaving to kill him. And Tulsa Doom tells him that. It was like, well, you're my son. I made you. I made you what you are. You live to kill me. If you kill me, what will be left of you? What would you live for? It's like, it kind of like thinks about it for a few seconds. And I was like, meh, barbarian, and chops him down, right? But that feeling of before selling Riverhorse, I would wake up in the morning and I had a very clear mission. I knew exactly what I needed to do. It's like, I need to make sure this company does as well as possible. For me, for the shareholders, for the staff, I have this responsibility. This is my mission, right? In the morning, very clear. And now I wake up and I go, oh, right, there's a number of customers that I'm working for, quite a lot actually, more and more. It's becoming a little difficult to keep it all together. It's been quite a rush of people that came and was like, ooh, can you design stuff? Now I was like, sure. But it's not, they're all separate projects, and the ultimate responsibility is obviously not mine. So like I always say to Ronnie jokingly, it is a lot more relaxing to risk other people's money rather than your money. So yeah, I'm glad. But yes, there was a moment of, whoa, I've lost this thing that I had for 14 years. Yeah, this thing that kind of defined my life.
There must be some of that. There must be some of that, because I mean, you must have really literally poured your soul into this endeavor for 14 years. And I think, quite frankly, it would be a bit strange if you didn't have those feelings. It's only natural. And I'm very glad you didn't say, oh, it's a bit like that bit in Conan the Barbarian where, he gets crucified. And I think you're exactly right. It's interesting. I mean, I've never worked in the games industry, but when you work as a consultant, you are giving your best advice and your best work for the client, but it's your client who makes all the decisions, right? They are the ones so you can advise them and try and guide them as best as you can. But if you give them two options and they pick the bad one and you explain, no, I think option A is better than option B. If they're insistent that you go with option B, you go with option B, and you do make the best of it you can. So it's very different from calling the shots, right? Working as a consultant.
Absolutely. And I think the best relationships with the best customers and the best products that I worked on through the years of consultancy is when the customer the client trusts you to make that call, which obviously, in a way, is worse for you because you will bear the responsibility in a sense, but obviously not the economical responsibility, but the moral responsibility, I guess, at least, if you care, and I do care. But when the customer trusts you to make that choice, I think that led to the best projects, the best products, because sometimes when the customer says, okay, I hired the expert, I hired this expert, and then I don't listen to the expert. I keep countermanding the expert. As a consultant, you kind of go, but why did you hire me?
Why am I here?
Yeah,
did you just hire me to agree with all of your bad game design choices?
Yeah, well, it's just like, you could do cheaper options and not hire me. It's like, I don't quite. I always say the metaphor is like somebody hiring an electrician to wire up their house, and then going, oh no, I think the wiring, I'll do it. I've done a bit of wiring before. I can go, your house is gonna burn down. Oh no, don't worry about it. No, I know my thing. Yeah, it's like, really? How many houses have you wired before? Oh, a bit before, maybe a little. You're sure your house is gonna burn down?
Again, no, I'll do it. I recommend option A, okay. But if you're going with option B, okay, fair enough. I'm still getting paid. And I'm going to give you two very difficult questions to answer based on that brilliant electrician sort of analogy. Is, Alessio, what makes a good game, and conversely, what makes a bad game?
There is no good game or bad game. All games are good and bad for different people. Unfortunately, that's the reality of it. What you find is obviously can't please everybody. So a game will work for some people and will be not good for some other people. So I guess is part of the skill is kind of understanding the audience and making it clear to the customer, the client, yourself, who are we writing this for?
So this is why it's super important you get good information in your brief, right? When Ronnie comes to you and says, hey, we want a new game, hopefully spaceships in the Warpath universe shooting each other. That's the game I really want, right? You need really, really good information of, okay, what kind of players do we want? Are we trying to appeal to? What are the feelings we're trying to get? Do we want a simple game? Do we want a very complicated game? And obviously having all this information laid out to you early has got to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, and the process is always there. For me as a consultant is always the first part of any job is to bombard the client with questions. Spend a lot of time asking questions, because often it's both for me to understand what's in their head, but also for them to understand, to form something in their heads. Because sometimes they have a vague idea. I want a game like this. It's like, what do you mean? Cooperative? So you start to bombard them with questions. How many players? How long does it last? How many models? What's the age range? What's the age target? So all of the process of understanding the brief first, creating the brief, is super important. And having it in writing again, because, months later you go, but why didn't you? I remember working for a customer and I did this whole design, etc. I presented it to the boss, and the boss after a while looks at it and goes, have you thought about using cards instead? Like, no, because when we did the brief and the components, I did ask, and you said, no cards. And so we went for months designing this thing without any cards. Okay, we can do cards, but that's kind of like redesigning it. But
sorry about that.
So, for example, there was this customer once that I designed this game, and after months of designing, when it was pretty much finished, the customer, the boss goes, oh, what about cards? Have you considered putting cards instead of this mechanic with dice? And we were like, well, no, because 3 months ago when we started, we did a brief and I checked about the components you wanted to use and you didn't want to use, and cards were on the don't use cards. So we developed all this game without cards. Now, if you want cards, of course we can do that, but it's kind of like starting from scratch. It's a big change, and sure, I mean, if you pay for the time, we'll start again. So about 3 months.
What was the outcome of that? Did they just go, oh, okay, no cards?
No, they actually went for the cards because they were really into the cards. Yes. So the game now, the final version has cards. Yes.
Amazing. Fantastic.
Yeah, the power of the boss is like, nope, I want cards. But you did it. fine, you're the boss.
Yeah, they're paying the bills. That's fine.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. But yes, so the briefing is really important. It is really one of the most important things. Yeah, absolutely.
And Alessio, is there a game, and I suspect the answer to this is the last one you worked on, but is there a game you are most proud of? Or, a time in your career you're the most proud of, perhaps?
Well, I mean, I always say this. I am not religious, but if there was a thing close to religion in my life, is Lord of the Rings. So I think in terms of magic was, I think, when I was writing Lord of the Rings game and being in the movie and being involved in the making the movie and being on the set and knowing all the actors and stuff. That was kind of surreal. You think back to it now and it feels like unreal. Just like an unreal experience, which that was perhaps the most magical of the games. I mean, which game is the most proud of? I don't know. There's so many games that we made, and I really can't answer that question. But I think Lord of the Rings, for sure, it was the most mystical experience. To be fair, it is a difficult question. Sorry, it's not often we get legendary game designers on, but I'm sure it's one your fans could answer. That's one for the players to answer that question. Yes, I'm sure that some of them will say, yes, you're not a legend, you're a nightmare. You made the most broken army lists ever. I still remember being shot by your rattling guns.
Yeah, that's fine, but you're a man who's designed, Kings of War, Bolt Action, Lord of the Rings. I mean, some people just want to be difficult. Let's be honest, that's incredible.
To be fair, let's say, I mean, Lord of the Rings was designed by Rick Priestley. The core design is not my design, is Rick's design. I was involved from the start. I did the army list, I did a lot of the design, and I inherited the system and developed the system for years after that. But the original core design is Rick's. People always say that I designed the Lord of the Rings. It's like, I developed it a lot, but the core. What
we'd really want to do is say something controversial and get Rick on the pod to set the no. Alessio said he designed it. No, that was my original design. Why is he saying that? Yeah,
well, it's much like Epic Warpath. Some people say, "Oh, you designed that." I was like, no. Again, Matt. The core design is Matt's, and I love that design. When he talked me through it, I was like, "Wow!" No, I like the fact that you define what the units are doing with the dice and with the tokens. I'm sorry, Bolt Action 3rd edition. Confusion. Too many games at the same time. Now with the tokens, the tokens that show you where you are at with every unit. That's very clean and very refined. I really love that design. And so when he asked me to work on it with him, it was really cool. And and I did a lot of the army list and the balancing and the tweaking. I influenced the rules for sure, and the scenarios, the way the scenarios works, the matrix of victory conditions, and to try to get as many scenarios as possible. So that's me, but the core design of the game is Matt's. I cannot say that I design Epic Warpath. It's Matt's design. Like Lord of the Rings is Rick's design, as opposed to say Bolt Action, Kings of War, those are my design. I came up with a core engine of them.
But having someone such as yourself with your experience to act as a sounding board and just give that feedback for every, and Matt's obviously had some great ideas here, and it's a great game. I'm really looking forward to it. But just having someone such as yourself just to bounce ideas off and just act as that sounding board is invaluable, to be honest, isn't it? For taking a good game and hopefully making it a great game.
Yes, because I'm an expert, and you know what the definition of an expert is. I always found it hilarious this week. An expert is a person that has made all possible mistakes in a certain field.
There's some truth to it, to be honest, isn't there? That's absolutely.
It's very true. It's very true. You bear the scars. So and it's funny, when I designed the game, I was a young designer, and I had Rick as that sounding board of the veteran expert guy. That I was saying, "Oh, we could do this, Rick. It's a great idea I just had," and he was like, "No, that's not going to work because of blah 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 blah. They tried it in this other game, and it doesn't work because of this, this, and this." I go, "Oh, you've been doing this for a while, haven't you?"
Yeah. Oh, I liked my idea. And am I right in thinking, so when I think back to those days and I imagine what you guys were doing, I very much imagine all these big meetings were done in the pub. Is that fair to say?
Not all of them, no. But yeah, a fair amount, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. And you've mentioned to us a big secret thing you're working on for Mantic, which you definitely can't talk about.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you've been working on Epic Warpath. Mark and Clem, I think, are part of the test team for it. So I'm super excited. And it's got... I haven't played it yet, but it looks great, and I think it's got some kind of hidden order kind of functions that sounds really cool. What else have you been working on for Mantic lately? Can you talk about?
Labyrinth, the board game was a very intense little campaign, and at least from my point of view, because it is. When I was saying that every game is specific for a certain audience, there was again a very clear example of that. The fact that basically that board game is for families, is for casual gamers, is not for uber veteran gamers, and that's very evident if you compare the reviews that you get from Board Game Geek versus the reviews you get from Amazon. I read the Amazon reviews, and it's full of joyous people. They go, "This is amazing! It's like being in the movie. I play this scene and I play that scene, and there's a song and there's a thing. Oh, it's fantastic, good fun. I was playing with my kids, and we really enjoy. We play it every Christmas is our Christmas day. We put the movie on and we play the game and we sing along. It's fun." And you go, right, exactly. That's the game I designed. However, Board Game Geek crowd on the other end, because they take it very seriously, because they are into the more serious side of gaming. It's like, oh, this game is too simple. It's like, well, roll and move in 2024. What? So there's definitely a different crowd with different taste in games, and it's you have to try to make it very clear who the game is for and who is not for.
And I think. Last year, when we were just chatting about games, and if I'm remembering this correctly, you talked quite a lot about simple game design being very desirable, keeping things simple or making things simple, and that's really interesting.
Well, yeah, that's it was the motto. I suppose it still is the motto of River Horse: is sophistication through simplicity. Because I always say this again and again, but complicated stuff is easy to design. Simple stuff is difficult to design. So, and it's very true. I mean, there's a very famous quote from Mark Twain, the writer, when he said, "Oh yeah, I wanted to write you a short letter, but I didn't have time, so I wrote you a long letter." It is exactly that. I think it captures it beautifully. It's obviously just writing something with tons and tons, pages and pages of text is easy, because there's so many variables there that they kind of, in the general mess, the design is hidden. While a very simple, thin design, very simple, very pure, very minimal, it's difficult because it's very exposed. People, if you get it wrong, it was going to be very obviously wrong. So it's a difficult quest to try to keep it as simple as possible. And I think Kings of War is possibly the best example in my career of a game that originally was 8 pages on A5 piece of paper, and it worked absolutely fine. It was very enjoyable. And I'm sure you heard the story about Ronnie saying, "Oh, can you write me a war game?" And I was like, "I'll write it in 8 pages." And he thought it was like an intro, and then there was going to be a proper game with a big book, and I was like, no, that's the game. And we played it for a few years. So simplicity, difficult.
And actually, changing the subject slightly, but there's a good number of my friends have messaged me and said, "Hey, there's this game called Conquest. It's apparently amazing." A lot of my friends are really getting into Conquest, and people really praise the game design of that. And it's a bit more, I think it's a bit more sort of list buildy than Kings of War. But again, it's a very balanced, fair war game. It sounds really super cool.
You do know that Conquest was designed by me and Matt Ward, right?
That's why I'm mentioning it. Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
It was like, it's not a coincidence that you're mentioning this, right? Yeah. So Conquest was designed by myself and Matt Ward as a commission. Again, Matt was sub-hired by River Horse, and so I was the lead writer. But I think, again, if I had to say, I think, would I say that's my design or Matt's design? We kind of did it together. I think I lean more towards this Matt's design, as in, it's a bit more difficult. We really worked together on it, and we came up with the core engine together. But because I was hiring Matt, and Matt was working for me at the time, I think I let him lead more than I led. So I suspect I feel more comfortable saying that's Matt's core design. But yeah,
you were the loving uncle, just there, to support him and
no, we
make him look good.
We worked together very tightly on that one. Yeah. Okay.
So I think we've got a good sense of it. I think I've just got one more question before I hand over to Mark. We've got the secret project coming. Obviously, you're going to be leading the River Horse staff. It sounds like what we can expect from you from Mantic in the future is kind of more of the same, to be honest. It's largely from a fan's point of view of both River Horse and Mantic. It's kind of, can I say, it's just sort of business as usual, really, as far as we're concerned.
Yes, absolutely. It shouldn't be too different indeed. I mean, more games, more hopefully cool games. I'm really enjoying writing the Ghost in the Shell roleplay game, I have to say, and Ronnie has some nice ideas to make it integrate it a bit with other things he's thinking about. So now there's a lot of development with that, and I'm really excited about that. I really love that IP. So yeah,
me too.
So it's definitely
I'm seriously excited.
Yeah, me too. And it's, you're right. More of the same. More cool games. The only difference, I guess, is that I don't have to worry about moving pallets across the ocean, manufacturing and all of that, and sales.
Yeah, having a heart attack over that. Absolutely, the business side of things, which are completely out of your control. Hey, come on, while we're here, come on. I've got to ask you. Not every day we talk to a legendary game designer. I've got to ask you one more question. Why? So I'm a man that loves Antares, right? Beyond the Gates of Antares.
Yep.
I think that game should have been a mega hit, and it never was. And I feel deep sadness for that. I also love Mantic's Firefight, which is also a fantastic game. Why do these, 28mm sci-fi games that are fantastic, why is it so hard going in this space with 40K to find a niche?
Well, it's a big beast you're trying to fight, right? Against. So many people are trying and keep trying to compete with Games Workshop, and particularly the 40K side of things, and it's such a well-established IP. I think the biggest strength is the IP. I think because my impression, and I may be wrong, of course, but my impression is that when I played 40K, because I haven't played for a few years now, but you play several editions of the game, so it's not the actual game that keeps you going back to it. Is the story, is the IP, is what you're seeing in your head. The game, obviously, being a cool game, playable game, helps. Otherwise, you wouldn't be playing it. But I think those how many years now of stories, games, computer games, novels, that immersive background is not a simple thing to recreate. You can create a game system that is cool, but the weight of that almost realistic. It's not realistic, of course, but there's a feeling, a bit like Tolkien achieves that impression.
It's the weight of the history. The history
right?
is entirely fictional, but it's the history is real.
I think competing with that is really difficult. The game systems, yes, you can do, we've designed game systems that some would say are even better than 40K. Obviously, again, like I said, some games are better for some people. Some games work better for some people than others. So, again, there is no better or worse game, in my opinion. It just depends who it's for. But, competing with the IP is really, really hard.
Yeah, I would chip into dealing with the models is another thing. Their models are spectacular, although expensive. But I mean, you've got great models, great story. It's tough to overcome.
Yes. Not to mention a chain of stores, which obviously helps a lot in making your game, the one that people see.
Well, the other thing, too, is they have it in the stores, not even their own stores. They have it in stores. So, it's very hard to get Mantic products or Antares products on your local hobby store shelf, whereas I think my local hobby shop has an entire section of it dedicated to Warhammer products. I mean, they've got 6, 7 shelves plus stand-up displays, game tables in the other room, pre-made terrain, leagues running on certain days of the week. It's just it's an unstoppable machine.
Yeah, how do you compete with that? Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, mind you, I mean, just anecdotally, I went into the local game store recently because I know Age of Sigmar 4th edition, I'm going to say, is just releasing. So I have a load of Khorne models sitting on a shelf and have done for years. And I thought, maybe it's time I break these out and build them. And I went in the local store to see how much. I think it's 4 or 5 Khorne just dogs, like sort of angry looking dogs that the sculpts are something like 20 years old. How much is a pack of these 4 or 5 models? And it's something like €42 for 5 dog models. I mean, who seriously though, who can afford this? You need a lot of those dog models if you're playing the game, That's and times are tight at the moment. That is quite frankly, I think that was a kind of irresponsible amount of money to ask. That's a lot of money.
On the other end, the company just releases good result after good result, so you could say that they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing,
right.
And it's a successful British company. Shouldn't you should So they obviously know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's
Sad
right.
I sold
keep
my
buying
stock.
them.
Sad I sold my stock.
Mark, is there anything you'd like to ask, buddy?
I mean, I'd like to dive into Kings of War just a little bit. So we have to ask the question because it keeps coming up on all the podcasts, Alessio. So do you have anything to do with 4th edition?
Well, Taxion 4th edition.
No, Kings of War 4th edition.
To be honest, I lost track. Since I stopped working on Kings of War on 2nd edition, right? I wasn't involved with 3rd, so I haven't played since. So I will have to catch up and see what's what with Kings of War. I really not in contact with Kings of War very much these days, but I will. I want to at some point.
I'll be following up on that.
I mean, from my perspective, I think Kings of War is actually in a very healthy spot at the moment. It doesn't, to me personally, it doesn't seem like it's crying out for a new edition, but I'm sure there will be one.
Well, normally there is. I mean, I just done Bolt Action 3rd edition, and it is, obviously people are already starting, what about the 4th edition? It's like, so basically when you release a new edition, you always start to work, and not work, but you start to think about the next edition, of course.
There you go.
This is very much. Sorry, Mark. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I think 4th edition for Kings of War is coming next year. I think we're going to get COC 25 this year. Hopefully the Abyssals will be in there, and then we'll see what happens. I mean, I kind of think 4th edition might be an interesting point in time because the game's doing really well. Everything's, the rules are in a good place. It's like you don't want to put up another edition and then screw it up. And then, irritate a bunch of people who are going to leave the game because we're in a recruiting mode right now and getting people to join in. So the one thing that comes up is, Alessio, we all trust you. So it would be nice if you were guiding things over there for the 4th edition. And so we all feel confident. So, but it just keeps coming up. So there you go.
Can I just say, I'm confident in the rules committee. I think they know those guys know what they're doing. Yeah, I'm confident. I'm just happily Alessio's still doing the things he loves and making great games and keeps on trucking, to be honest. Super. Guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been really it's been a treat. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for both joining me. Is there anything else we want to touch on before we call this a podcast?
I'm good.
I just have to say I loved Warpath 1st edition, Alessio. You know that. So you had
that old chestnut.
Oh, I love that game.
It's been a few years.
Absolutely. And then you were just mentioning, some of your favorite games, Warhammer 5th Edition. My kids played it, so a very special place in my heart. So they loved that game for that period of time. It was fantastic. So
wow.
Thank you. It's always good to see you, my friend.
It's good to be here.
Thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much, dear listener.